Hey guys, today we're going to be working with Selenium to show you how you can automate Twitter. So we're going to be using Selenium and Firefox to basically write a Twitter bot. So basically, this is our guide on the right hand side here. And right here you see in this code block, this is the script that we're going to be using for demonstration purposes today. So before I jump into that script, I wanted to cover a few things. I'm not going to go through this whole doc or anything. Basically, because in the doc I'm basically just telling you a few of the key parts, which we're going to cover anyways. But I did want to point out this bit about Xpaths. If you're not familiar with using Xpaths, it's basically a way to specify an exact component on a web page. So like this is an example of what an Xpath looks like, and we'll show you these inside the code in just a bit. But I'm going to show you a quick way you can get the XPath for a given component. So before we jump into the script, right? So let's say if you have Twitter open in Firefox, you can right click on a component, like say the password field. Do the same for the user field or the login button. But so right click on it and say inspect. And it's going to bring up this little window down here, and it's going to be on the inspector tab, and the highlighted portion is for this component. So that's the input field for your password. So you can right click on that and go down to copy and say XPath, and that's going to give you your XPath. So open up a text editor real quick, and you can just paste the XPath in there like that. And let's zoom in. So this is what an XPath looks like. So what we're going to end up doing is pasting that inside our code to refer to certain components. Like we're going to grab the XPath for the password field and for your username field, and for anything you want to click on or interact with, you're going to have to find the XPath for that. So usually you'll find the XPath for each component, and then you're going to put those in your script. So let's close this for now. And this, we don't need that anymore. Also worth pointing out is a couple things. I put a couple warnings on here in red. One is that the XPaths for your components are likely to change if say for example Twitter updates their website, or whatever website you're working with. If they change their site, the XPaths might change and you might get an error in your script. You might have to relook up the XPath and update your script. So, and there are other ways to look things up, like by name and stuff like that, and we'll go over some of that in just a bit. The other thing to be aware of is that generally with Twitter, like they do give you an API to automate things, but you're supposed to not go past certain limits, and you kind of got to follow the rules. You can't abuse it. You can't do too many searches in a certain amount of time. You can't follow too many people in a certain amount of time, stuff like that. I've actually had trouble even being able to follow anyone using the Twitter API, and the Twitter API is a bit of a pain. I think it's a bit of a pain to use, even compared to Selenium. So plus, like if you're using their API, they know you're automating it, and they don't want you to do certain things that could be considered abuse. So that's kind of the reason, one of the reasons to use Selenium. But do be warned, they probably don't want you using Selenium in automating stuff without using the API. Probably breaks some sort of terms of service, and depending on what you do, they could very well just terminate your account. Even if not for using Selenium or a non-Twitter API way of automating Twitter, they may terminate your account based on something you're doing. Like say if you follow way too many people too quickly, they might throttle you, or worst case terminate you or something if you break the rules too much. And they're not always clear with exact limits, so you kind of got to use your best judgment. So anyways, let's scroll down. So this code block here, we actually don't need this browser window. We're going to open this in another editor, and we're going to just look at the code. So I'm going to exit out of here, and we have 2 files in here, or 3 files. I guess the Gecko driver keeps a log file. So that was test 1. We're going to open up test 2. test2.py, and this is our script. Let's see, let's just make this full screen, and our lines are still these are way too long. I guess I could have shortened these or broken up the scripts, broken up the lines. I guess if I zoom out so it fits on the whole page, this is probably hard to see depending on the size of your screen and how big you have the video. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to, you know what, maybe this is better off if I just open this in Kate. So yeah, let's just go right ahead and do that. So let's see here. Yeah, here we go. Test Selenium. Throw this in Kate. All right, so this is going to work out a little bit better. Maybe. Yeah, this looks almost just as bad. I'm going to stick with VI. You know, is this a little bit better to? You know what? If I set line numbers on here. All right, there we go. That's a little bit better. We're going to stick with the VI for now, and yeah. So let's just go through this script and see what it does. Before we actually go through this script in detail, I'm going to talk a little bit about an overview of what we're doing, and then I'm going to demo running the script. So if you look at the bottom here, this is where, so everything above this is mostly done in functions, and that looks really jumbled up and messy, and I apologize for that. First thing it does is read the credentials, so I have the username and password saved in an external file so that I don't have to have them, you know, hard-coded in this script, which is easier to maintain, and also I don't have to share my password with anyone who I share this script with. I can put this script up on GitHub, or I can, you know, record a video of it like I'm doing right now, and no one has to see my username and password. So this will read in the password, username and password. This will log into Twitter. Then we sleep for a little bit, and then we look up our stats, like how many followers and how many followers we have and how many people we're following. Then we sleep a little bit longer, and then we do a search, and we're searching for the term kittens. So this will bring up anybody who is anybody who did anything kitten related. And basically this is going to find the usernames. It's going to look for the top posts that match that search term, and it's going to find the usernames of the people who made those top posts. And this is just a starting point, just to kind of demo what you could do. But I guess the real goal you might want to do with something like that, once you have a username list like that, you might follow those people in hopes that they follow you back, or you might dump a list of people who follow those people, because, you know, their followers are likely to follow people in that niche. So you could you could get a list of their followers and then follow each one of their followers one at a time really slowly so that you don't get banned or something. That would be like a strategy or a tactic or whatever that you might use if you were building an actual Twitter bot for production use in order to get a bunch of followers and for like marketing purposes. So you could do that. That's like one possible use case. That's not what we're doing here though. Here we're just searching for kittens and finding the users who were associated with that. So we're going to show you how you do that. So I'm going to minimize this window here, and let's see here. Let's just clear this out a little bit. So we're using Python 3, and we're going to run test. So test 2 is our Twitter bot. So let's just run this, and you're going to notice that this opens up a new Firefox window. And there we go. There's Firefox in the corner there. And I'm just going to leave it alone and not touch it. Now I'm using the sleep function in between each thing it does. See there it pasted in the username and then the password. Then it submits the form. And there we go. It switched over to our profile, and it is now scraping the followers and the people who are following us. And there we go. The script actually printed it out in the terminal, and then it did a search for kittens. And the next thing after it searches for kittens, it actually scrolls down a little bit, and then it grabs the users. Because interesting thing about this is that a lot of the actual entries will not show up until you actually scroll down to them. So when you initially load this page, you're only going to get 2 entries. And if you try to scrape more entries than that, they just won't exist, and you'll get an error saying they don't exist. So if you scroll down first, it will load all of those entries that it needs to in order to scroll down, and then you're able to scrape those extra entries and find the users associated with them. And in this case, we got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 15 usernames. So we found 15 usernames, and what we choose to do with those, that's a whole nother story. But this was so we were able to get 15 users that we might want to follow them or see who follows them, and follow those people to try to market whatever we're marketing to them. That's generally the idea if you were using Twitter, if you're interested in automating Twitter. I mean, I guess there are other reasons to automate Twitter. Some people like to just post things automatically and stuff like that. But usually it's for marketing purposes, at least from what I've seen. Any case, what else could we say? So you could have it keep scrolling and grabbing users and come up with a large list, but probably this would be something good to start with. You could just, because each of these probably has quite a few followers, and you could follow those followers, and that would give you something good to start with. But any case, that's what it does. And right now what our script is doing is it's just sleeping for a very long time. So it's just going to leave this browser open for us, and the script is just going to be sitting here waiting. It's basically doing a sleep right now. And when that eventually times out, it will call quit, and it will actually close this browser for us. But we're going to end up closing the browser ourselves first, because I just put a ridiculously long sleep so that it doesn't die at the end of the script. Basically for testing purposes. So if you look over here, you'll notice this little, it might be a little small to see on the video, but you'll notice this little robot head icon. It shows that the tooltip for it says browser is under remote control. And you'll see the more obvious thing is these two different shades of orange. You see these like diagonal stripes on the URL bar. That's kind of a tip off that the browser's being remotely controlled. Any case, so one thing I'd like to point out is the use of the sleep function. And there are two reasons for using the sleep function. One reason is that, let me just close this for now. So one reason is that you want your, Control C to kill that. And yeah, so you want your page to actually be loaded before you try to scrape things from it or load the next page. But also, you want to make sure that you don't do things too ridiculously fast, like if you jump from one page to the next, to the next, to the next, or if you fill in your password, then your username, and submit really, really quickly. That could kind of be a tip-off that you're a bot, and websites that don't want you to use automation might cause trouble for you. Might say, hey, verify that you're a real person and not a robot. So that's worth being aware of also. So anyways, let's move up to the top and look at some of the functions that we have defined here. And I feel like I should kind of justify my reasoning for leaving these long lines like this. I know this looks incredibly messy. It's just easier to deal with them like this. If you're using something that wraps the text, it's even less of a big deal, or something that doesn't wrap the text, I should say. But yeah, just breaking this into multiple lines when you have to constantly keep updating it anyways is a bit of a pain, and I just chose to leave it like this, even though it does go against best practices. But I guess that's up to you. If you could break these strings into multiple lines and it would still work just fine. Anyways, so let's go up to the top here, and we actually don't need this. This just tells you where to get the Gecko driver. I just left that in the comments. I probably could have removed that because it's already in our guide. I should also point out that if you need help installing Selenium or getting set up or some of the basics, we already published a video showing you how to do the basics with Selenium installation and setup with the Gecko driver. And you would need a different driver if you want to automate Chrome or something like that. But we're using Firefox, which uses the Gecko driver. Anyways, so we've covered a lot of this, like these import statements on the installation video. It should be the video that I published just before this one, because these videos are meant to come out one after the other. So my Selenium, my how to install Selenium video will come out first, and then my Twitter automation with Selenium video, the one you're watching now, will come out right after that. So if you want to know how to install Selenium, go back and check that video. So anyways, I'm going to go over this again real quick. So for these import statements, these are just basic things you would always import when working with Selenium, or at least what I do. You could technically just import everything, but we're importing the things that we need. We got the WebDriver, timeout exception, WebDriver wait, expected conditions. Now we're importing time. That one's really important because we're basically using the sleep function, like you'll see down here, sleep. So timing is important in our script for the reasons I talked about before. You do need to tell your script to sleep every now and then and wait for like pages to load or just to not do things too fast. So that's why we have that. And I also imported RE for regular expressions. There are a few places where the best way to go about grabbing a piece of content was to use regular expression. So things I had to parse, I wanted to use regexes for that. And then we do from OS path import expand user, and I believe I used that for just finding your home directory to read the credentials from. Anyways, so let's move along here, and let's see. Below this, we take the driver. This just creates an instance of the Firefox WebDriver or the Gecko driver. Then we take, okay, so this is where we use expand user. We imported expand user from OS path, and now we're expanding user and saying the home directory. So that this is good, like say if you're on Linux versus Mac OS, it's just going to take your home directory and place it in there. I believe this would also work for Mac OS, definitely works for Linux, and I'm not sure about Windows. I have not tested this on Windows. That's the one platform I've yet to test this on. I mean, I guess there are other OSs out there I haven't tested it on too, but any case, normally people would be developing on either Linux, Mac OS, or Windows. Let's see, so the user, we set it to blank, the password we set it to blank just to initialize those variables. We're basically treating these like they're global variables, even though nothing's like object-oriented or anything. Anyways, so this first function, read creds, reads our credentials or our username and our password. Remember, we read those they're read from a file. That way we don't have to hard code them in our script. So here we have a variable for the user and a variable for the password, and we say with open. So we're basically just opening this file. We're opening the file in wherever your home directory was. Remember up here we looked up your home directory. So in your home directory, it expects you to have a subdirectory, a hidden subdirectory called planetary vegetation, and that's just an arbitrary name that we had for another project that I used some parts of the script in, and I'm just sticking with that for now, but you could call that whatever you want. So this subdirectory, and inside that subdirectory there's going to be a file called creds.dat, and what it expects is the first line in that file is going to be your username, second line is going to be your password. Just stick with that format and this code will work. So we're basically creating a file handle as F1. So this will open it using this syntax, the with open syntax. Once this block is finished, it'll automatically close the file for you. But basically we're opening this file, and then we read everything from this file into a variable called data, and then we take data and we say split it based on and we're just using a regular string split, not a regex split, and we split it on a new line. So we basically split it based on new lines, and there should just be that will split the first line with your username and the second line with your password. It splits those two out and puts it in a variable called x. So that's going to be an array or a list. In Python they're called lists. And so here what we're doing is we're taking x we're taking the zeroth, the element at 0, which is going to be your username, assigning that to user, and the element at the index of 1, which is the second line, and assigning that to the password variable. And so there we go. That's how we get our username and password out of there. Read creds. So that's the read creds function. I would recommend using that if you're saving your password. That way you can easily share your script, and you don't have to be like, oh, did I forget to remove that password from my script when I sent it over to my friend? Did I accidentally show someone my password? If you show someone how you wrote the script, probably good idea just to get in the habit of not putting your password in a script. And if you wanted to take that a step further, you could use some kind of password management system to encrypt your password also. Anyways, Next function is the login function here. So def login, and the first thing we do in this login function is load the URL for the Twitter login page. So the driver is this instance of the driver we created above. So we say driver get, and get will just pull down, it will just load a URL in your browser. So that loads up the Twitter login page. Then we print the title for it for no specific reason. You could think of that as like a debug purposes or whatever. And once you load this page, we sleep for 5 seconds. We could decrease that if we wanted, but just to make sure, depending on how slow the connection is or whatever, just may as well just leave it sitting there for 5 seconds. That way it also doesn't seem unnatural, and you're going to be sure that it's loaded. So once you've done that, you have two input elements, the user field and the password field. So that's input element 1, input element 2. And for each of these, you want to look them up. And as I mentioned before, Xpaths, here we're using Xpaths. So mostly every operation we're going to do, not all, but many, are going to use the driver. And we're just going to use methods within that driver instance. So we're going to say find element by XPath. So you can look up an element on your page by the XPath of that element. So we already looked this up by hand, and we pasted this XPath in here. So it's going to look up the element at this XPath, which in this case, this first one is going to be your username, and the next one is going to be your password. The only difference between these two XPaths is, see right here, in square brackets you see a number 1, and here you see in square brackets a number 2. So that's one div here, and then another div here. And all the elements below that are actually basically identical, which is why like your password field and your password field and your username field kind of look similar, and they're laid out all the same. So these are kind of like elements in an array, or at least they're addressed that way anyways. So after that, we sleep for 2 seconds. So after we've grabbed those, we sleep for 2 seconds. We could probably do away with this sleep. That might not necessarily be necessary. And we say input element 1, this is your username field, send keys user. So user is the variable that we stored our username in. So all the keys inside that username, all of those characters, we're going to send those as if they were keystrokes. They're getting sent to this username field. Then you sleep for another couple seconds before you put in the password so you don't seem unnatural. And then you're going to say input element 2, which is your password field, send keys password. Same thing, it's just taking the characters from your password string and sending them like keystrokes. Sleep a couple more seconds, and then you're going to submit. And the way we're doing this, I'm not sure offhand if there are other ways you could submit. I guess you could like click on the button or whatever, but in this case I'm just referencing any one of these elements. I'm actually referencing element 1, and I'm saying submit, and that's actually just going to submit the form that's associated with. So that's going to submit, and once we've submitted that to log in, we're going to use a try statement because this next thing throws an exception. And this is going to use WebDriver wait. So rather than sleeping, we're going to specifically wait for our title to hold a certain to hold a certain bit of text. So we're going to say until EC title. So we're saying it's going to expect the title to contain the text home. So if you successfully log in, it's going to bring you to your home page, and the title in the top is going to say home. But it's also this 10 right here. So this is your driver variable, and this number 10 is just telling it to time out after 10 seconds. So this should fail if it doesn't successfully load this page, a page containing the title home, within 10 seconds. And once that's loaded, we print the title out just so we can see the title is updated. And finally, we just do nothing once it's done. We're just putting that in there for syntax purposes. Anyways, this next function will gather the stats. And so basically we have two variables for following and followers. Followers are the people following us, and following are the people we're following. So here I say driver get, and I specify an exact page. Here I actually have a hard-coded. Now I probably could have just taken this last bit. This is the username I'm using for test purposes. You know, I don't know if this is the best judgment for me to share this username that I'm using in a YouTube video, but that's completely fine. I created this user specifically for the purpose of testing. I could totally see that going wrong. But either way, there it is. And we're going to take that username. I could have just read that out of the creds file and, you know, concatenated that to the string here, but I didn't. Anyways, it's going to say driver get. I should probably fix that. That could use fixing. Anyways, driver get Twitter and then your username, and that will bring you to your profile page, which is where it will tell you how many followers you have and so on. So once I load that page, wait 5 seconds to make sure the page is loaded. And then let's see. I guess I commented this line out. I should probably just delete it. But one way I was finding followers was finding an element by link text followers. I forget if maybe that was valid at first and then it wasn't, or I was just trying it out. I forget why I even left that there. But we don't need that anymore. So, you know, I'm actually just going to delete that line right now. So anyways, data1 equals driver find element by Xpath. So this is finding a div, which is actually going to contain, this is actually the div just below the body tag. So this is just a div that has a ton of other tags and components within it. And rather than looking up the exact followers and following, because I believe that was all together as one big text piece that needed parsing anyways, here I opted to just use a regex and parse out the exact values that I wanted. So my regex will basically, so I'm doing an RE search, so searching the text in data1.text. So basically when I looked up this div and stored it in data1, I take data1 and say text. That's giving me everything within that component, all the tags and everything, just treating it all like a big block of text. And I'm passing that as a string to the regex search function. And then my regex is telling me to match, it's going to match a new line and a number, any number more than 0 numbers, so it's 1 or more digits, and followed by a space in the word following, a new line, then 1 or more digits, and then the word followers, and then a new line. And so you'll see the parentheses here will grab these digits and these digits. And M1 is your match object, and we say if M1, if we found a match, then, you know, proceed to try to grab out the values from it. So if we found a match, take M1 group 1, that's going to be that first thing that we matched, that first thing in parentheses, then group 2, the second thing in parentheses right here. So it's going to grab that one. So that this first one is how many people following you. Second one is followers. Now with this account, I don't have any followers and I'm not following anyone. If you had a real account, you'd probably have followers that you're going to try to track. But anyways, it's going to print out the number. And with this demo account, it's just 0. So like if you look here, I ran the script. It says following and followers 0, which is correct. So next function we try to do so that you can track your followers, and you could even save that to a database or something and like make a nice little graph or something fun like that, if you wanted to expand upon that. So this next section is the search section. So this one's kind of interesting. So you would send a search term to this function. In our case, when we called this function down here, we passed kittens. It's just, you know, a funny thing. People look up funny cat videos or cute kitten pictures, whatever. Something people look for online. You know, just kind of a generic thing. But driver dot, you know, very popular type of search that people look for. But, you know, whatever niche it is or search term you want to use, you could substitute in. So anyways, I made this variable for links, and in that's just a list where I'm going to store all the links in. We'll see how we do that below. And then driver get, we saw how we used the get function before. We're basically just going to load this page. We're going to load the Twitter search page. And this first part is just a string literal, and we concatenate our search term, which is a string that was passed here. And then the rest of the URL is going to be source typed query, so they know it was a query that you typed in, I guess. And so that's going to load a Twitter search for this search term that you tried to search for. And then you're going to sleep again for 5 seconds, because that's the standard amount of time I picked to sleep every time you load a page. And then we have a list of users who posted. So our objective here is to find what users posted things that match the search term kittens. So probably they're using like the hashtag kittens, or they just have the word kittens in their post a lot. But we're going to try to find those users who are associated with top posts that come up when you search for kittens. So users who posted, so we have 4 lines here, and so I'm going to zoom out so you can kind of see the flow of this program here, and see how when I zoom out, this just looks a whole lot more manageable. It's probably harder to read when you're watching this video, but on my screen it looks pretty neat and easy to manage. But this is generally how I write the code, so it doesn't actually bother me that I have these long lines when I'm writing this code. But yeah, just so you can see, I'm gonna zoom back in just a second, but just to show you the flow of the code. So I have users who posted, and that's that list of users, and we're gonna append. So the way we grab the user is we're going to take the XPath. Now these first 2, remember I said when you first do a search, there are only 2 entries that are visible, at least for the size of our browser, the default size. Maybe if your browser took up more space, you would have more entries visible. But any case, I was only getting 2, and I'm not resizing the browser or anything. So these first 2 are using this XPath. This is the first entry, and this is the second entry. Now this will find that these are the entries for the actual username for those first 2 posts. So this is the username for the first post, username for the second post. So each of those is getting appended to this users array. And so we use the dot text. So basically we say driver find element by XPath. That gives you the element, and you say dot text to get the text that is inside that element, and that text is going to be the username. So you're going to do that for the first 2 elements, and then if you try to go and notice both of these XPaths are exactly the same, except for right here in the middle, this number 1 and this number 2. So the first one is, your first number 1 is your first post, number 2 is your second post. Now you would expect the rest of the elements to follow that same XPath, but it changes. So if you want to see more of these, if you tried to increment this to a number 3, it would fail and say it doesn't exist. So you actually have to scroll down. So I'm going to zoom back in real quick, and notice after these first 2, I say driver execute script, and I tell it to Windows scroll 0 document body scroll height. So it's basically telling it to scroll down, and after you scroll down, sleep for 2 seconds to give it time to load the additional entries. So you're going to see additional additional tweets on Twitter that match that search term. And so from here we are able to so I'm going to zoom back out again. So from here we're actually able to append another. You'll notice this next XPath for this next entry. I actually don't need this line. I was using this for debugging purposes, but I'm looking for the 7th entry, and I was able to grab that. It took some debugging, but I was able to do it, and that's only doable after you scroll down. But this XPath is actually different from the XPath above. So there are a few little things in here, like the number of divs and stuff like that are a little bit off. I believe maybe this one is exactly identical, and this one was one that failed. I forget, but pretty sure we don't need this line, because what I decided to do was so essentially if it fails, it's going to cause your entire script to just stop at that point, because it throws an exception. So what we could do is we can put this in a try statement and accept pass. So if it fails, it's going to just quietly pass over the items that fail and not collect those items. So if it fails to look up a username, it's just going to silently skip that one and move on to the next one. So the whole thing isn't going to fail, and you're still going to grab as many as you can. So let me zoom back in. So this is easier to, yeah, this is still pretty ugly the way when I zoom in this yeah, this line is just way too long. But anyways, so we have a for loop. So we got the first two entries, and we're going to try to grab the next entries, number 3 through 20. I believe this is exclusive, so we're actually going up to the range function is exclusive, so we're going like 3 through 19. But anyways, it's a for loop looping through a whole bunch just to see we can grab a whole bunch of them. If we were doing this for real, we might make this loop a whole lot bigger and incorporate a whole bunch more scrolling. So we'd read a whole bunch, scroll, read, scroll, and so on until we have enough collected. But in this case, we're just doing we have a for loop, and we're only going up to 20, or actually 19. And then within this for loop, for each of these numbers, we're going to say try. That way we can try it, and if it fails, it'll just go to the except statement and pass. But we're going to try saying users who posted, append. So we're basically taking this list of users, and we're going to append to them the value we get when we say driver find element by Xpath. Basically the same thing we did up here, except that it's a slightly different Xpath. It's changed a little bit, and there are a few things that changed besides just incrementing the number. But what you'll notice is I'm going to zoom out. So what you'll notice is on this line, so I have this is the variable, the index. So I'm looping, my for loop is going, it's looping and storing the current index value on the variable I, and then I place that variable I right in here. So when you loop through each of these entries, the number that's going to change, each of the tweets, the number for the XPath for each tweet is just going to increment by 1, and that number is going to be right here in the middle of the XPath. So all you have to do is increment that number by 1 each time, and you're going to be able to, it'll give you a new XPath, which you can use to refer to the new tweet. So you can loop through a whole bunch of XPaths, just incrementing the number 1 at a time, and grab each one of the tweets. And if one of them fails to be grabbed, no big deal, it'll just skip over it. But that's basically how that works there. And so besides incrementing this number, there were a few other things in this XPath that made it slightly different from this XPath up here. So anyways, that was worth pointing out, something to pay attention to. Be very careful with the XPaths, pay attention and make sure you have them exactly correct. But basically this will just loop through the remaining entries, and then after it's done looping through all these entries and it's compiled this big list, we're just going to go ahead and print out those users, the users who posted. Now for you wanted to use this function in a real actual production use case, instead of just printing the users, you might want to return those users, so that way the search function would return however many users it finds, and then from there you can choose what to do with them. You want to print them out, display them somewhere, save them in a database, pass them to another query that processes them and does something else with them, like maybe like all their tweets, or see who's following them, or something like that. Whatever you want to do with it, you might want to return it if you were using this in a real program. But for demonstration purposes, we're just going to print out the users who posted. Now, let's jump back to our other window over here, and you'll notice that's what we did. So our script basically loaded the homepage of Twitter, our profile, found the followers we have, and then it looped through and found all of those users associated with those posts. And this is it. It basically just printed out. It didn't even print these in a list. It didn't loop through the list and print them one at a time. All I did, if you look at the code over here, all I did was print the array. I stored these users in this array or list, and then when I'm done finding the users, I just print the array directly. I'm not looping over the array, I just print the array. So that's why here you see that syntax. You see the output is an actual array representation, and each of the items in it is a username on Twitter. And that's basically it. So yeah, that's pretty much, I think that's mostly everything in this script, right? So print the users, and so maybe we should look at the bottom here, and we'll get to the very bottom in a sec. So basically, although we just reviewed each of those functions, and so once most of this is functions, like at the very top we had we had our imports and we defined a few variables, whatever, initialized a few things. Then we defined a bunch of functions, which we just went over. And then we call each of those functions in order, telling them to sleep where we think it's necessary and processing them how we choose. And if we were to turn this into a module or something, you could call this from another script in a similar way, and you could chain these together and tell it to do certain things. Like you could look up users and pass that list to something else, or maybe you look up a list of users and say how many of these users are like you might look up the people you're following, see how many of the people that you are following actually followed you back, and maybe the ones who don't follow you back, you're like, hey, that's not fair, I want to unfollow these people, if that's how your strategy for Twitter works. Or maybe you're just like, oh, I know these people aren't following me, so I want to put some extra effort into retweeting their stuff to get them to follow me. Or maybe you don't necessarily want to unfollow them, but maybe you want to like put a little extra effort to get them to become your follower, or something along those lines. However you want to approach it, but just some ideas of what you might do with some of this information and some of these techniques. So you could build upon this a lot. It takes a little bit of time to put it all together, but this is like, I guess, a pretty good foundation to get you started doing just about with what we have here. You could do just about anything you want with Twitter. And it's just going to take time to look up Xpaths and to keep testing and testing and testing. I always get nervous testing because every single time I run this script, it opens up a new browser and logs in each and every time. So like I almost feel like Twitter is going to flag me and say, why are you logging in over and over so many times? You're just supposed to stay logged in and keep looking things up. You're not supposed to log in every single time, right? Like who does that? I don't know, but it does make me, when I have to repeatedly keep testing things over and over just to get my script working right, or maybe my output is a little off or something, I just keep rerunning these tests. It takes a while because of all the sleep statements, and I always get a little bit nervous that my account's going to get terminated. But basically that's what the development process is like, or what it's been like for me with this. And remember, I mentioned that when the script finishes, it just sits there and waits for a very long amount of time. It's just going to sit there and wait. So in that way, it gives you a chance to see what's on the screen, debug things, poke around a little bit if you need to. But this is that line that does that time sleep 1,000. So that's 1,000 seconds, right? And then once that finishes, it will eventually quit. When you call driver quit, it's actually going to close the browser on you. You'll still have the output in your console, but it'll close the browser. So that's it. This is our Twitter bot. This is our basic demo Twitter bot using Firefox, Selenium, and Python. So that's pretty much it for today. Hopefully you found this useful. Hopefully you found it interesting. Hopefully this helps somebody. You might want to hit the little thumbs up button. You're probably going to want to subscribe for more excellent content like this. We do a lot of programming content, a lot of server related content. We do a lot of other technology related things, like we're doing electronics, single board computers, Raspberry Pis, 3D printing, networking, hardware. We're doing like server hardware, desktop hardware, mobile hardware, anything tech related you can think of, we're doing it. Databases, messaging systems, middleware, Java, Golang, Python, and plenty of other languages. I'm really trying to hit like every language I can, or I'm trying to get a pretty good variety of languages and come up with guides for each one of them. So we have a lot of excellent content, and you probably don't want to miss out on that. So you're probably going to want to hit the subscribe button, and you're probably going to want to hit the little bell icon, just so you get an alert when we come out with a new video. And beyond that, I would definitely encourage you to just scroll down and leave a comment. If you have any questions, like I try to read all the comments eventually, sometimes sooner, sometimes later, but I try to eventually get back to everybody, and I do try to answer questions where I can. So any questions, leave a question down below. Comments, criticism, anything you want to tell us, just leave a comment. We want to know what you think. We want to know what you have to say. So definitely take that opportunity to leave a comment down below. And that is pretty much it for today. So thank you for watching, and we will see you guys next time.